This is an absolute heist for the Toronto Raptors, as reports have come out about the Oklahoma City Thunder looking to trade up into the top 10 of this year's NBA draft. And some of the rumored packages going around are an absolute steal for this Raptors team and still make sense for OKC given their current position. And given some other reports about who the Raptors have been interested in, who they've been gaining buzz about in this year's NBA draft, and some of the quotes that came from assistant GM Dan Tolzman yesterday, all signs point to a trade happening along these lines. So we're going to break down what all these reports are saying, why this is a huge W for the Toronto Raptors, the specific case with the Oklahoma City Thunder, and why it makes sense for both teams, and frankly, why I am very, very excited about this NBA draft and all the options the Toronto Raptors have here now at this point. So let's jump into it. Of course, I got to plug it. Hey, check out the Spotify. All of our videos go up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. So if you want to listen to Raptors Digest on the go, especially during this crazy season where all the trade rumors, reports, and everything that's been going on as of late, you definitely check us out there. Leave a 5-star review if you are enjoying the podcast content. But let's jump into it because there's a lot of stuff to dive into. Firstly, Jonathan Givony came out and said that I keep hearing rumblings that the Thunder are trying to move up in the NBA draft. They have the number 15, number 24, number 44 selections, and they could package all three of those picks and look to move up 4 or 5 slots, maybe even 6 to Toronto. So Toronto's definitively named out there as a potential trade destination with the Oklahoma City Thunder in terms of making a deal happen. And this is a very interesting proposition for a multitude of reasons, because firstly, I want to get this off first. The more picks Masai Ujiri has, the better for this Raptors team. The Raptors scouting, the Raptors team, it's not just Masai, but Bobby Webster, the entire front office usually hits the nail right on the head in terms of the exact pick you want the Raptors to select with these selections. Of course, not foolproof. We've seen Malachi Flynn get drafted over Desmond Bane, but 9 times out of 10, the Raptors are going to find some really, really nice selections. And basically, another report came out today that essentially revealed from Sam Vicente that I've gotten some buzz that Noah Essengay buzz with Toronto. I've gotten Danny Wolf buzz. Actually, he really ticks their dribble, pass, shoot, big stuff that they like. I've also gotten some Jean Beringer buzz with Toronto. I've gotten a lot of names for Toronto. So essentially, the Toronto Raptors are very, very interested in a lot of guys that are frankly a bit of a reach at the number 9 overall selection, but they're players that they really like. They're players that they really, know. And some of the quotes that we heard from Dan Tolzman yesterday, which I broke down in a video this morning, essentially alluded to a lot of teams being interested in trading up into the top 10, trade with the Toronto Raptors, their number 9 overall position. Everyone is sort of trying to get their mitts on that draft pick, and the Toronto Raptors are looking at all these different options. So it's, you watch that whole quote, why I alluded to the fact that I wouldn't be shocked if the Raptors trade down in this NBA draft. So the Oklahoma City Thunder has some offers to put together. What could be coming back to Toronto here? And there's one deal that is an absolute heist. Unbearably would just be an absolute W for this team that's going around Raptors land right now. It's Nikola Topic and then the picks that have been put together out there in this trade scenario. So if we get this, we got to, Masai Ujiri probably already deserves a statue with the Kawhi trade and all that stuff, Bobby Webster, all those guys. But you do this deal, and that is an absolute bona fide win for the Toronto Raptors there. Because, you get all these pieces, it's just a steal. We'll break down all of these different assets because even an amalgamation of these assets. So, it's either the 3 picks for the 1 pick or, Nikola Topic and just one of these picks, the 25 or the 24 selection or the 15 selection, whatever it is, then that's still, I think, a really solid deal for the Toronto Raptors. Now, why is this the case? Well, firstly, we saw the names that the Raptors were interested in, and if I have the mock draft up correctly here, basically, you see a lot of these names out there in the mix between this, 15 through 24 range, and you see Noah Essengay, and, these mock drafts have people going all over the place, but he's projected to go 19th in this recent NBA Tankathon draft. You have Wolf out there going 17th in this mock draft, and then you also have Jean Beringer as projected to go 22nd. So a lot of guys that fall within the range of where these Oklahoma City Thunder picks are landing here now at this point. So if the Raptors have a lot of targets that they think can be very valuable assets for this team, and you can get a couple of them, you can get a couple pieces of them and hedge your bets on it, then frankly, that is a huge W, especially if you can land this guy in Nikola Topic here, because this dude is an elite playmaker with a high IQ. He has great size for a league guard. He's a crafty finisher and foul drawer. That's one aspect that really just goes under the radar about Topic's game. You watch the highlights and stuff. He's a guy that can really, get to the free throw line, finish around the rim in interesting ways. He's a strong pick and roll decision maker. Extreme examples, but people say his finishing can be the Luka Doncic-esque, where it's just herky-jerky, get to the spot. It's crafty, right? It's crafty, and we see, and Luka Doncic, right, took a team to the NBA Finals and stuff. Not saying he's that caliber of player, but definitely a guy that has some high upside. And then, he's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. He has average athleticism. He's not like a perfect jump shooter. He's not Steph Curry from the three-point line by any means. There's concerns about his ability to guard at the NBA level and does need to improve his off-ball impact. He's a guy that needs the ball in his hands to really be effective. So, not a perfect player by any stretch of the imagination, but the upside of Nikola Topic is very, very high. And he was a guy that was projected to be a top 4 pick in last year's NBA draft, but ended up tearing his ACL and fell down the draft board a little bit to get selected by the Oklahoma City Thunder. So, a guy that, again, I think is, getting a little underrated. You have a potential top 4 pick sliding due to injury, and of course, for guards, an ACL injury is a risk to come back from. I had it. It's tough to really return from. But I think this is a risk worth taking, especially if you're getting another draft pick out there in this NBA draft. Of course, you run for the wind. If you get this deal, you take it, you take it and run. You call HEIST. It's a huge W for this team. But if you can get Topic in one of those first round picks, I think that's a huge, huge win for the Toronto Raptors as well. But even if Topic is not involved in these trade packages, even if he's not the piece that's out there in one of these hypotheticals, there's a lot of interesting names that have been brought up in terms of the Raptors' interest, as this report came out and stated. Danny Wolf is one that I already covered Essengay out there on the channel. Very high upside. Defensively can really just guard out there, has potential as one of those 3-and-D players. But Danny Wolf is a guy that I know a lot of people are very, very intrigued by. So if we take a look at what he brings to the table, he's close to a 7-footer, a quarter inch shorter than 7 foot. Projected power forward center. He's about so he's a bit more mature. 21 years old in terms of center, so can come in and be more polished coming straight into the NBA. Out there in college last season, came out averaged 13 points per game, 4 assists, 10 rebounds, 1.4 blocks, and shot 34% from the 3-point line, 50%. And I've seen some comparisons like a Kelly Olynyk with just a completely unhinged basketball style. That's some of the descriptions I've seen in terms of his actual play and out there on the basketball court. But looking at his strengths and weaknesses, he's a guard-like skills and a center's frame. He's a elite passer with strong vision. He's a stretch big potential at 36% from 3. So again, that stat is different from what the statistics are saying on NBA.com, but that NBA Tankathon, but that is what it is. He's a top-tier rebounder as well as help defender. So, rebounding is huge out there at that center position. And, a lot of these, big white guys like, oh, can they help? Can they do this? He can be a rim protector. He can be a guy that definitely protects the basket and helps out there on that front. But, he does turn over the ball. Same way we saw with Kelly Olynyk when he was with the Raptors. When you're creating at that center spot, especially with your size, it's easier for smaller players to pick the ball loose and do different stuff. He struggles against physical defenders. He's limited as a role man in NBA sets, probably more of a pop player, and needs a tighter shot selection and consistency. So, again, not any crazy red flags there. A guy that's going to be a polished high set. And we know the Raptors, and this is another thing that came out from Tolesman. I didn't really address in yesterday's video, but he talked about how they like having centers that can play in that high pocket and really, do something out there on the basketball court and generating offense. We saw it happen with Marc Gasol with this team. We see it with Jakob Poeltl. We saw it with Serge Ibaka in his later years with the Toronto Raptors. So that is a skill set that this team really likes to have at their 5 position, and Danny Wolf definitely fits the bill in terms of a guy that can fit that selection. So don't be surprised if the Raptors trade back and end up selecting Danny Wolf. And the more interesting name, like the more probably polarizing name, the boom or bust guy, is on this list that I brought up here, is the Joan Beringer. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Get my French going, putting it to the test. But he is a player that, is your boom or bust classic potential guy. Now, we have one of those in Oler Chamche. Of course, the bust doesn't really matter because we select him with, I believe, the last pick in the NBA draft or one of them, last season. But definitely one of those super high upside guys or, super high downside because, Barrett, he's elite length and quick twitch athleticism. He's a defensive anchor and rim protection. He's a high motor and transition speed, and he's switchable, mobile for his size. So, he's a player that definitely, you don't have a lot of concerns about his ability to play defense at the NBA level, but there are some, concerns about his ability to, be an offensive threat for for any team that drafts him. So he's raw, skill set, and touch. He has poor shooting and, poor free throw form, which is even more concerning than, poor free throw shooting percentage because, if you're a poor free throw shooting percentage and your form is busted, then there's a lot of work that has to be done. Whereas if you have a decent form, then it's really just mostly reps. He's prone to fouls. He missed reads and stuff. Classic issue for one of these big men coming into the league, right? They're foul prone. They need to get used to defensive sets and stuff, and then need strength and better rebounding technique. So a lot has to be developed here. Definitely will be a guy that, comparison to a Coleman Malawatch, Danny Wolf, will be more concerning if the Raptors are trying to compete next season and he's going to be out there in the rotation, but definitely a player to keep a serious look at out there, with, especially if we end up trading for the 14th or the 15th and the 24th pick, with that 24th overall selection. But let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section down below. Do you want to see the Toronto Raptors make one of these moves? Anyways, you guys are the best. I'm signing out.